Hi, and welcome to Upgraded Biology. My name is Dr. Tami, and I'm your host. Upgraded Biology is the outcome of 20 years of practicing functional medicine and specializing in hormones. This podcast is where we will present all the information and tools I've learned and continue to learn on how to harmonize and optimize all aspects of your health. Before we begin, I'd like to emphasize that this podcast is separate from my medical practice, BioThrive, where I practice as a physician. It is, however, part of my desire to bring free information to the general public so that each listener is able to step more fully into their role as the CEO of their own health and upgrade their own biology. Hi, and thank you for coming back to Upgraded Biology, where you get to learn about things that allow you to be a better CEO of your own health, but the rest of your life as well. And today we're going to take a look underneath your finances, and you'll find out that financing and banking and your health have a lot of similarities. I'm so excited to introduce to you Garrett. Garrett and I have known each other for a very, very long time. And I'm going to let him introduce himself because he has books, he has just amazing things to share with what he's done. So welcome.
Good to be with you and hanging out. Always enjoy my time with you. Started in finance in 1998. I still sometimes think, man, how am I 47 now? Because I was always the young guy in finance. Now I'm I'm the established, been around for a while. My first 10 years in business, I wrote one book, but now I have 10 books. So I've written 9 cents that happen almost every other year versus the first one took a really long time to do. They're all on money and prosperity. I even have a kid's book. I don't know if you know, I did a kid's book with this woman, Julia Cook. She sold 4 million copies of kids' books. And I was like, you know what? Parents can read it and not admit that they didn't know everything that's in it. And it gets read all the way through. Sometimes people buy books and it's more shelf help than actually being read. So I'm like, kids' books get read over and over again. And so she just did a really brilliant job of taking the message and simplifying it, and making it very cute and fun and illustrated extraordinarily well. So yeah, and then I have a book that'll be coming out that I've written using humor to teach finance, because I did a comedy special on Amazon Prime called The American Ream, teaching finance through fun. Is mostly humor with just a little anecdote or two, kind of throughout. But yeah, and been married for 23 years now. I have 2 kids, 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. Been on a crazy health journey because of them. That's been led me to people like you and led my family to be really healthy. And I looked at it as in the world of finance, it's kind of the same thing. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people that are really reactive. There's a lot of people with different, ideas, and it's very just almost like allopathic medicine, where it's very disconnected. It's very disconnected in finance. The attorneys aren't always talking to the accountants, or the insurance people aren't talking to the bankers. And so you just have this disheveled type of situation. And that's kind of how it is in health. As you know, people get sick and then they go to the hospital. I've been more like, how do I proactively navigate this? Because health is wealth. And if I could take care of my health, I have more energy, I have more enjoyment. And what you might not know is in 2023, I was in stage 4 kidney failure. And
I did
yeah,
not.
I have, my mom had a kidney transplant. My other aunt is, got polycystic kidney. My grandfather had a transplant. So it's kind of like this genetic situation, but I believe in epigenetics, that I'm not just destined based upon, whatever happened in my family. And that what had happened, I just was really stressed in 2023, which really pushed this up and triggered it. But thankfully, I have great resources and people around me. So, I'm in a really good situation now. I feel immensely better. I control a lot of it through 2 things, just, stress and eliminating that, because I just didn't realize how stressed I was in 2023 after selling a company and, figuring out what I was going to do with my life and unwinding a partnership. But I just eat really, really healthy food. And that means when I travel, I have a backpack with me at all times with food in it, because there's not a lot of healthy options when you're on the road sometimes. And I don't want to be relegated to whatever's available. So, I have someone that makes my meals for me every day. So I have kind of this approved list of food that I eat from, and it makes me feel really good. So, yeah.
You're a great CEO of your own health. That's amazing. I'm sorry that you had to experienced that, but you'll probably live a lot longer because of it. Sometimes those things that happen to us are an odd gift. And you're right, there's trends in medicine and health and wellness, and there's trends in finance too, right? Like, oh, crypto, oh, real estate, oh, it's just this craziness, and they make you feel like, if you're not taking advantage of it, you're stupid. And why would you not invest in that if you could? And you're going to regret it, because years down the line, you could have done so much better. I feel like banking and health are the same, in that I always say that your health is like a bank account. And when you're making regular deposits, you have no fees and you get compound interest. And that means that when you are retired, which is, your longevity, you're filled with abundance, you're filled with vitality, as opposed to not making deposits. When you don't make deposits, all of a sudden your bank account goes down because you have fees
Yep.
and no interest. So, why don't you walk us through some of the things that you feel are really important that people are missing out? I remember getting my first tax return
Yeah.
and being shocked that my accountant really had not done a lot. This was years ago. I have a different accountant now, but years ago, there were no tax savings. They prepared
Yeah,
my.
they're like a historian. Here's what you made, here's what you owe. Not really a
Yeah,
strategy.
there were
Yeah.
tons of things that I had no idea, and ended up paying a lot. And then I worked with you actually in your company, and you had a guarantee back then that you could review my tax returns and find money. So the average person, not everybody listening is an entrepreneur and has businesses, though a lot of our listeners do. But the average person, what are some trends that they should stay away from? And what are some interesting ones to you?
Look, 80% of what they think they have to know about finance is actually irrelevant and a distraction. Most people have a hard time discerning distraction from opportunity because everything, like you said, sounds great. They use FOMO, they hype it up, and so they get everybody to talk about it or write about it, and then everybody feels like they've got to do it. But then it's a lot of times just more hype than it is substance. And so the foundational pieces that really matter is, number one, discovering your investor DNA. So only invest in things that are aligned with your values, your competencies, and where you can gain knowledge and have skill sets, and your drivers, what you are interested in, what you're willing to pay attention to. Because if you hate it, you're not going to want to pay attention to it. You're going to procrastinate it. You're not going to learn enough. And you're going to be very kind of rookie-ish in that arena. So investor DNA is you become a better investor. And to me, there's really four main lanes to pick from. And you might pick one lane, maybe two, but you're going to have a primary and a secondary, and everything else is pretty much going to be a little bit too overwhelming unless you have a substantial amount of wealth and you can hire full-time people that work just for you, like these family offices, which is kind of a term coined by the Rockefeller family. They had enough money that they could just hire attorneys that worked only for the family, accountants that worked only for the family, investment specialists that worked only for the family. And so, yeah, that's a little bit different than the person that's going, okay, what do I do with a few $100s a month right now, right? So that's a very different situation. So if you can start to figure out your investor DNA, the first lane that you might look at is business. Business is an investment, so some people could acquire a business or they could start a business. And that could be substantial in that, first, it could create a lot of tax advantages like you talked about. Second, it can grow in value, especially the less dependent it is on you doing activities every single day. And there's infrastructure that's going to increase value. And there's also the potential for appreciation, cash flow, and tax. So it's kind of three-dimensional in that world. But there's a lot of people that don't want to be business owners. They just don't want to take that risk. They don't want to have that level of responsibility. It's not really in their makeup. They want to be part of something. They don't want to be the person that initiates it, right? So it's important for everybody to understand their money persona. And there's four main personas out there. There's the money persona of the planner. The planner is a stable, thoughtful, strategic person. They're really important for an organization that wants to monitor the effectiveness or efficiency of something. Or you might have a mindful manager. A mindful manager is detail-oriented. They're efficient. They're great at improving things. They're you know, they're going to find out how to be more resourceful. They're going to figure out how to reduce waste. Or you might have a creator. A creator is an artist, an inventor, an entrepreneur. They lead with innovation and ingenuity, and they show ways that people can add more value. Or maybe a catalyst. A catalyst is a mover and shaker, a connector, or a visionary. And they think and play big and show other people how to win together. So when you know your money persona, then you know what your strengths are. And then you can utilize the strengths of other money personas so that you can accomplish more. But when people think that they have to know everything or they have to do too much, they get what I would call overly diversified. And it becomes diversified. It becomes divorcified. They don't understand the results. They're putting money somewhere they couldn't tell you why. They don't know how it's performing. They haven't protected the downside. They don't have an exit strategy. It's not creating any cash flow. So there's not really good investments. There's good investors. And so some investments are just terrible for people because they don't know enough about it. And other people, that could be a great investment because it's just part of who they are. They really understand it. They're willing to research it. So if the world of health, you're going to know things to invest in and not invest in because of your expertise, because of your willingness and understanding of how to do real due diligence. And, if all of a sudden people start to get you to try to invest in something you know nothing about outside of your expertise, that creates risk. So the way I look at it is the more you can grow your knowledge while you grow your money, the less risk there is. The more you grow your money without knowledge, the greater the risk. So I know someone that owned 90,000 Bitcoin at one point, but he sold it before it was worth $1. So he would now be worth 10 billion or something, right? But it wasn't part of his investor DNA. It didn't know what he had. So real estate would be the second category that you might consider. Some people are good at it. I don't love real estate. When I did a lot of real estate, Tami, was like, okay, I talked to bankers, I talked to attorneys, I talked to property managers, and no tenant ever gave me a hug or sent me a card. They just I was just the person they sent their checks to. They didn't care to know me. I don't like looking at spreadsheets all day. I don't like dealing with those kind of things. But other people, they love it. They love the art of that deal. They love looking at the spreadsheets. They like to understand what the cap rates are. Or they might love to do Airbnb arbitrage, where they just go find places and they say, hey, I'll rent it out and then I'll split the proceeds. They don't even have to put any money down. Or there's other people that are going, hey, I know how to make a property resort type property where you can, fractionalize it and have multiple owners. And then, they establish cash flow. It's like, if that's your area of expertise, then you can really make money. But if it's something you're going to be really passive about, real estate is not a passive activity. It's very active. And I know a lot of doctors that get involved in real estate and it destroys their practices because now they got this other distraction. A third category, and this is something that you're doing, is intellectual property. Intellectual property is you could improve your entire industry and say, here's something I figured out. And, you teach that. That would be B2B, or you write a book, or you have a podcast, or you host events. Like, intellectual property is an asset class that some people don't even consider because financial advisors don't get paid by you creating intellectual property. And then the fourth category to maybe consider would be Bitcoin. There's ways that people know how to cash flow it, what they stake it. They could borrow against up to 50% of it, tax-free, and they might deploy that somewhere else. And I just know people that that's their livelihood. That's what they get excited about. That's what they want to do. So if you pick a lane and get really good, aligned with your investor DNA, you'll become a better investor, be more informed, you'll be able to reduce risk, and you can create cash flow. And that's the game. How do you create cash flow? Cash flow is like blood work. If you don't have cash flow, it doesn't really matter what your muscle is. It doesn't matter what your net worth is because it's going to starve out. And so, I want to see people's cash flow to understand how healthy they are financially.
That's so important to know. It's almost like money is a mindset first, rather than a thing to do, right? You have to. I know when I started my business, I had a saying that, some people are afraid of needles. I'm afraid of numbers. And so that was a real handicap because I was shocked to learn that what I thought was the most profitable part of my business was because it was the most fun for me to do was not nearly the most profitable. And so that's still something that I could choose to do because that's what I loved, but I had to remove the illusion that it was profitable. because I had to increase my financial IQ.
Right.
I remember another thing that you walked me through right at the very, very beginning was the sort of like a checklist
Yep.
of, you know, you can't have financial freedom until you have financial security. And your financial security really is about having a checklist of certain things.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about a high yield savings account that was online. I had just been putting my money into the savings account at my big corporate bank and getting
Yep.
less than 0.5%.
Right. Yeah.
And then you also said you need insurance. And I was like, no, that's a waste. I'm not, I'm healthy. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to no, it's just like a black hole that I dump money
Right.
into. Why don't you share a checklist and the
Yeah.
reasons behind some of those?
So we have two major checklists. One is the financial health assessment for safety and security. Another one is the financial health assessment for money and investing. And if people just go to Instagram and DM me at Garrett B. Gunderson and put in the word upgraded, I'll gift them those two financial health lists, right? So they can go through.
We'll put that in the notes as well.
And all you do is you go through and like, let's say it starts with car insurance. And say, do you know your deductible? Yes, no, or uncertain. Do you know your limits liability? So you look at all the components of policy and you either go, yes, that's handled. No, it's not, or I'm not sure. So now you know what to address. See, because part of it is there's blind spots that people have. Blind spots are things lurking in the future that could create risk, that could confiscate wealth. And most people don't learn about them until they're in the process of it. Just like in health, there's things you could teach people so they would avoid high blood pressure, so that they would not have these issues with diabetes based upon the things that they could do today, how they could improve their sleep, how they could improve, like have the proper vitamin levels, all these kind of things. That's all stuff that if you know, it's easy to handle. If you don't know, you find out when there's a symptom. And so what that checklist is, it helps you to understand where you're set, where you're not set, and where those blind spots are. And one of our mutual friends that might have introduced us, he went through that checklist and had zero yeses. Zero yeses. And what's
I
funny
was
is,
pretty close.
so he was coming to my event and he was like, "Hey, I don't think I can come to your event today because I just have so much going on and I just am I'm in a really tough spot." And I go, what's interesting is you just called the fire station and said, "Hey, my house is on fire, but don't worry about it. I'm going to try to take care of all this first. And then when it's taken care of, I'll call you back." I'm like, "Get here. Your house is on fire. We're going to help you put out the fire." And, the good news was we were able to help them turn those no's to yeses within a year. There was someone in Seattle in your area that came in. They had 7 yeses. And then by the end of the year, they had 100% yeses. Like, all progress begins with an awareness. And without the awareness, we're walking around with ignorance. And the biggest tax we pay is not income tax, it's ignorance tax. And that ignorance tax comes from not knowing. And part of the reason we don't know is because a lot of people fear finance. They don't understand money. They need to heal their relationship with it. And part of it is they don't want to meet with someone financial because they think that they're going to tell them, live a worse life, save more money, scrimp, save, and then 30 years from now, you can finally enjoy your life when you're too damn old to enjoy it. So, I get where there's some of that. And part of it is people don't want to feel foolish or stupid. And look, when I was in my early, 20s, I used to chalk over people's head to try to sound smart, but it was my own insecurities. I love to use jargon. Talk about the Monte Carlo simulations I'd been running and the econometrics courses I'd been taking and all the, the alpha and the beta and all this kind of stuff. And people are like, "Oh, this kid must be really smart," but that's not empowering to them. That jargon felt defeating and deflating. So I want to help people just say, all right, what is important to know? That's the foundational pieces. And then the rest of the stuff is just noise, and you just cut out that noise by doing some basic things. Number one, every time you pay your stuff, you automatically set some money aside in a sweep account so that you have enough liquidity. And that's 6 months of your expenses set aside. That gives you staying power, gives you peace of mind. If you have a health challenge, it gives you some leeway. If you have a career change, you've got some power there. Number two, to get there, it's about plugging financial leaks. So there's 4 main I's that create inefficiency. The first one is the IRS. Most people tip the government. And with some basic tax strategy, like we talked about, there's things that you can do to keep the money. Number 2, interest. There's 3 R's that help people with interest. Restructuring their loans can massively improve their cash flow. Renegotiating their interest rates, if they have a good credit score, can absolutely help them keep more of what they make, or reallocating their funds. If you're sitting there with a 0.5% earnings on a savings account and you're paying 10% on some credit card, let's pay that thing off. And that happens all the time, Tami, because people just don't think about it, even though it's simple, because there's too much happening. They just don't know what to do. So those 3 R's can help them keep a lot more of their money. Then the third I is investments. There's a lot of hidden fees, non-performing commissions, and these have a massive impact. We might think it's inconsequential. Like if you earn 10% over 30 years on 100 grand, grows to 1.74 million. Ooh, that sounds amazing. But what if you have a 12B1 fee, which is a marketing fee for the investment company? What if you have expense ratios that don't actually help you because an index fund would outperform it anyway? Or what if there's legal fees or admin fees just to have the retirement account? If you only earn 9.2% instead of 10, it grows to 1.4 million. That's a $340,000 difference from less than 1%, because we all hear about compound interest. We also have to be aware of compounding costs. It's a compounding cost with just a small headwind. And then the fourth I is insurance. A lot of people have duplicate coverages. They have improper structure. They're insuring something inconsequential and they're exposed on something catastrophic. And so what happens is the first dollar we pay for insurance is the most expensive dollar. The last dollar we pay for is the least expensive because it's least likely to occur, but the most catastrophic. So with simple and elegant design, people end up getting either more coverage or paying less money for things that didn't matter. I see people with $100 deductibles. I'm like, if you got in a $300 fender bender, would you make a claim? Because if you make a claim, they're just going to raise your premiums. Let's only have claims on things that matter. Move that money up based upon how much you have in savings, and you can save hundreds of dollars or get hundreds of thousands of coverage by simple redesign. So IRS, interest, investments, and insurance are the 4 I's. When we plug those leaks, we can help get more money into that savings account till you have staying power. But then once you do, you automatically save, then you deliberately invest. You pick one of those lanes. Is it business? Is it real estate? Is it intellectual property? Is it Bitcoin? Like, what area is going to be the place you really dive in and learn to grow your wealth? And really, the most important place is to start with yourself. You invest in yourself, in your skills, in your knowledge. Financial intelligence, if it's not there, is a permanent penalty. Every day someone doesn't have financial intelligence, there's a consequence, and it costs them money. And by the way, if you want to see what the cost is, go to any downtown anywhere in America, and the biggest buildings are banks, they're insurance companies, they're Wall Street. Someone paid for that. And yet,
we did.
Right. It's like I took my son to Vegas once and we're walking around. He's like, these are amazing buildings. I'm like, yeah, they weren't built by winners. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's because we're giving our money away with gambling. I'm like, exactly. And you just saw the light bulb click, right? So it's, how do we rig the game in our favor instead of being played in a game that we lose? I mean, it's simply just having certain awarenesses. The financial health assessments help, paying yourself first, plugging your financial leaks, investing back into yourself, and knowing your investor DNA is the real formula. That's the formula. I mean, everything else is pretty much noise. So we go, how do I make more money? Let's invest in myself. How do I keep more of the money I make? Let's plug the leaks of the 4 I's. How do I grow my money? Investor DNA. And then how do I grow myself? And part of growing yourself is you take care of your health, because the more energy you have, the higher your quality of life, the more value you can produce. And dollars follow value. So you become the best value creator, which comes from having the right mindset and also the right health.
Oh my gosh. We're not going to stop here, but we could, because that's just so beautiful. But how do we know? We just had a flood in our house, and we have we have home insurance, right? Well, you have to have home insurance. You can't have a mortgage without it. So yes, we had home insurance. And so we did all the things, right? Super time consuming, get the contractor's bid, and then they want the contractor's insurance, and then this and that and the other thing. So finally, one check comes, and the insurance company made it payable to myself and my husband and the mortgage company. How do we all three sign that so that we can put it in our account and
Well, that's a pretty
pay.
good delay tactic, because you know how property and casualty companies that sell car insurance, homeowners insurance, they don't make their money on the insurance. They make the money on the investing of the money, because they actually would be at a loss if all they did was sell the insurance. They'd be in the negative. They make up for it with investing. So if they get to float your money longer by having it delayed for some reason, because of a denial, because they're saying that they're assessing something, or they put a mortgage company on there, which obviously you can't go cash that check, it allows them to float the money longer. So here's my first rule with property and casualty companies. The more they advertise, the less they're going to pay you in a claim. They spend most of their money on advertising. So I like to be with companies like AIG Private Client, Chubb. There's a number of companies you'll never see an advertisement, and they have a
How
better
do you
claims
find them?
history. Look, I have this guy named Darren, and he's been in the property and casualty world since he was 9 years old, licking stamps for his dad's agency. He loves this stuff. I had a client that once was dealing with a $400,000 lawsuit. That's how much they'd spend on it. I'm like, why aren't you using your business owner policy? Like, Hartford, my agent said we couldn't. I'm like, oh, it's Hartford. Let me call Darren. I'm like, Darren, they have a Hartford policy. He's like, go to here, here, here. He's like Rain Man for insurance. And so, like, our roof had an issue when we bought this house a few years ago, and within 15 minutes they gave us the amount that was required. They replaced the entire thing, because he could quote exactly the rules of why they had to replace the entire roof and not just the section. When we had an issue with our deck at our cabin, the same thing. You have to have the right agent. Your agent is your first advocate. And it's like, one time I spoke at this chiropractic event, and I was talking about taxes, and one of the chiropractors went to their CPA and said, hey, I want to start paying my kids. They help me around the business. And this guy Garrett spoke about it. And he goes, I think he's more of a comedian than a strategist, and then I looked him up on Facebook, and he had his arm around the insurance, or the IRS commissioner. And I was like, oh, he's working for the wrong team. He's helping the IRS, not the customer. And so you want to have an agent that is your advocate, that will go to bat for you, because having the right agent that can understand what you have and that can help you with the company, that they're not beholden to one company. I don't want an agent that goes, I work for State Farm. Well, I want an agent that can represent all the companies. Now,
So how do you find that? How do you interview an agent?
So I just found this in Darren. So, like, anyone that works with me, I introduce them to Darren, and I don't get paid if they do any business with him, and he doesn't even care if they do a transaction. He just loves to teach it. Half the people, he just sends them to the person in their state. I just had a call with a client that I do these 1-day consults, and it's called the Cash Cab. We go to my cabin, and this person had decent coverage with their property and casualty, and they had a company that I thought was a good company that would pay claims. But I noticed, like, one flaw in the design. I was like, why do you have this umbrella policy that's only like $1 million? You make a lot of money. And then you've got $500,000 of limited liability on your car and home. The umbrella kicks in at 300. You don't need 500. And how much more would it cost to get 2, 3, 4 times more? Well, to double the coverage by simply lowering it on the car and home, $200,000, and then doubling it on the umbrella to $2 million instead of $1 million, $59 a year.
Oh.
And when I was just like, the agent thought I was calling to, like, replace the insurance. I'm not an insurance agent. I was just like, why wouldn't they do this? Because they're reactive. Because they're like the general practitioner that just has so many people coming in, they can't spend a lot of time with them. They're getting paid a little bit by each person, and they just can't dedicate the time and service to do it properly.
Or to do it in a way that's personalized or customized
Right.
to your situation. Yeah.
In my comedy special, I have 7 or 8 minutes dedicated to making fun of car and homeowners insurance companies, like all their slogans, like the whole thing. It's pretty fun little segment.
One of the things that I don't know where I came up with it, maybe even heard it from you years ago, and I don't always do it, but I've now started to put it in my calendar. And that is, I shop my insurance before it's renewing. So I put a date in my
Right.
calendar, about 4 to 6 weeks prior. And the other thing that they do is they leave it till the last minute to give you a quote. And then you're scrambling thinking you're not going to have any insurance and you're going to get dinged somehow. But I have every single year been able to lower our insurance premiums on our car, on our house.
In a time where it keeps going up and up right now.
Right?
So that's really good. That's a good suggestion. Like Darren was once speaking at one of my events and he did an hour, which is a long time to talk about car and homeowners insurance. But he goes, all right, someone give me the number of their insurance agent. And we had a speaker phone. There was 85 people in the room. And he called them and he goes, hey, just wanted, I wanted you to help me out. They made 10 of the 11 mistakes, he said, that most of them make. 10 of 11. And so the biggest problem is he basically said, hey, I just need the state minimums for liability. They said, fine. He said, give me the lowest. Like, they didn't argue or push back on anything because they're just looking to quote the business instead of saying, well, look, Tami, you're a doctor. Like, having state minimums means once this $30,000 of coverage is taken care of, it's on you, no longer the insurance company. Wouldn't you want an insurance company that's worth billions of dollars to protect all your assets with their attorneys instead of yours? How much more would it be to get that at $1 million versus $30,000? What if we found out that was $350 a year? Would that be worth $350? I think to have $2 million of coverage, that's a pretty inexpensive amount, but they would be so afraid to tell you it's a higher premium than what you currently have to get you the right coverage. So, it's like going into a doctor and you're like, hey, I need this one thing. And they go, okay, we'll provide that one thing. They don't ask any questions. They don't do any tests. And it turns out that one thing wasn't even the issue. It was something else. And, that's kind of how the insurance companies are sometimes.
Are you ready to transform your wellness routine? Picture stepping into a sauna that not only reaches 185 degrees, but does so using both infrared and traditional steam technology, working together for the ultimate detox and sauna experience. No more choosing between one or the other. With Finnmark Designs, you get both. We have partnered with Finnmark Designs, the highest rated sauna manufacturer, to bring you the absolute best. Finnmark produces saunas that are built to last over 25 years, crafted with antimicrobial Western Canadian cedar and equipped with UL-listed infrared heaters, ensuring that the experience is both safe and luxurious. This isn't just a sauna, it's an investment in your health, vitality, and peace of mind. When you choose Finnmark Designs, you're joining thousands of satisfied customers who've made the change and are feeling the benefits every day. Ready to upgrade your biology with a sauna? Go to upgradedbiology.com/sauna. Finnmark Saunas, where luxury, reliability, and wellness come together.
Okay, so we've got our checklist. I love the eyes. 6 months of your living
on your personal side. Yeah.
Wow. I know.
And there's ways to get there. Like, first off, I want to have liquidity anywhere. I want to have access to money. So when I talked to you about insurances back in the day, when you have cash value, that's earning more than a savings account, but it could be your savings account. You don't have to have it all just sitting in a bank. I only want 30 days sitting at the bank. I consider gold part of that 6 months. I consider for every $2 I have in Bitcoin, I consider $1 available for that savings because I could borrow against half of it and I know it's going to be volatile. So I'm not saying that you just have to have money sitting around doing nothing, but you have to have money that's available, accessible, and that gives you that kind of like confidence that, hey, if I need to change a career, or if I need to take care of a family member, or if I have to address a health issue, you've got the money. And that creates peace of mind. And the more you have peace of mind, the more productive you can be. When people are in scarcity, they make irrational decisions, especially when it comes to their finances. And those irrational decisions reduce value and destroy exchange, which means they're going to be less wealthy. So
let's go by decade. So if I was in my 20s, what top 3 financial goals and advice would you give me?
So the mainstream financial media is going to say, if you just start early enough, you could put $100 away a month and you could be a millionaire when you're 60. The problem is that $1 million is going to spend like $200,000. It's not, it sounds good in theory, but it's not reality. The the thing I want a 20-year-old to do is not, you're going to hear people say this very often. I want them to lose money as fast as possible on something, because nobody's wealth journey begins until they lose money. Once they lose money, they're willing to learn. If you came and talked to me, I was 19 years old. I bought my first house on a champ loan, which meant no money down. I bought this $97,000 townhome. I rented out to my other college roommates. And after I graduated a few years later, I sold it for 170 grand. So $70,000 of profit. The second deal I did, I gave my brother-in-law 25 grand. He gave me back 50 grand 3 months later for helping him get money in escrow for a real estate deal that he turned around and flipped. The third deal, my buddy Joel came and he said, hey, my friend's going to lose this house, but I just got him a job. He's far behind on his payments. What if you bought the house? When he refinances, he'll split the equity with you. And I did the analysis. There was already like $150,000 of equity. So I used my wife's credit, no money down, 3 deals in a row, huge returns. You couldn't tell me shit. Like Kanye has a song called "Can't Tell Me
on water,"
right? And it's like, hey, you can't tell. I'm Midas. Everything so, the thing is, in your 20s, I'd say sales skills. You got to invest in that. You've got to invest in your financial intelligence, and start figuring out how to create cash flow. Everyone else is going to tell them to put money in a retirement plan. You're going to lock that away till 59 and a half when you're early 20s. Who knows what's going to happen between AI and technology and everything else? So you better really invest in how to make more money by being more productive and building a network. I would really invest in, in my 20s, the best thing I did is I joined Masterminds, and I built amazing relationships that gave me huge mental models and frameworks and vision, and really saved me to be a lot more productive. And if I didn't have that, I might have had a bunch of money in a market that didn't whisper any good advice, or I couldn't, talk to, and I didn't know what to do. So it's really invest in relationships when you're in your 20s and invest in yourself. That's the key.
Probably the same in the 30s.
Yeah, in the 30s, like now, as you start to have, like, I feel like if you're a business owner, you want to have two things. You want to grow your business with people, processes, and automation that creates the proper procedures and technology to support your growth. And some people starve that out too early by putting money into other accounts they know nothing about. Like, that would be kind of weird if Apple was like, what we're going to do? We're going to diversify by just putting money into our competitors. And like, that's not how they work. So what you do is you build your business substantial enough that then you transfer the business wealth to personal wealth. Some people put everything in their business and they don't have anything to show for it. The business has an insatiable appetite. Other people starve the business and they have a bunch of money over here, but their business never gets off the ground. So you have to find where you can actually start paying yourself and putting money away. My first place that I put money away, even when I was in my 20s, was I used properly structured, optimally funded whole life. It's not an investment. It's just a savings. And then when I have that 6 months of expenses there, I've used that cash value to buy property, to buy business. I built this wealth engine that was guaranteed and protected that I could also utilize when things came up, that was tax advantaged and accessible. So for me, that's the first stop. Then secondarily, it's you pick that lane. Is it going to be business, real estate, intellectual property, or maybe it's going to be Bitcoin? I think most crypto's bullshit. I don't think it really is going to be anything. I think there's only one that really matters for sure, and there might be a handful of others. If we go back to the 1990s, everybody was talking about internet stocks. Those don't exist. Basically, Amazon made it through, Google made it through. There's a handful of companies that made it through, and everything else was just a bunch of nonsense. So, I mean, it's so hard to do, but if we can just get so good at saying, I'm sorry, that's not me, I'm not going to invest there, even though people might be making good returns at the time, because those things are what derail us and distract us. And I've never felt worse than when I invest in things that later on I'm like, why did I do that? It was just a huge waste of time and energy. And yet I did it because this is what everybody else was doing. You've got to learn your investor DNA so you know what to say no to.
Okay, so now we're in our 40s, probably have some more responsibilities financially, whether or not it's kids, house, etc. Planning a vacation. What are we doing with our money in our 40s? What should we be doing in order to expand our security and freedom?
Yeah, I'm so used to speaking to business owners, so I'll speak to business owners first, then I'll speak to the masses second. The masses, the advice is really easy. What you're going to hear from 90% of financial gurus is pay off your loans and put money in a retirement plan. To me, that's the raise the white flag. Don't think about it. That's the, hey, Tami, is there a magic pill I could take for my health? And Big Pharma goes, take this pill. By the way, your leg's going to fall off, but you know what? You won't have a skin rash anymore. Whatever it is, right? They never talk about the side effects. And by the way, there's not such thing as side effect. There's just effect. So when people go, well, the side effect, I'm like, no, that's the effect. You just call it a side so it doesn't sound as bad, you know? And this is the same thing with finance. If they had to put full disclosure, if you put money in a retirement plan, it's locked away till 59 and a half. There's a 10% penalty if you want to get you it early. The underlying investments are what's going to drive whether this works or not. If it doesn't work, you lose time value of money and they ask you to put more money in it. There's a myriad of fee that comes out, and those people are always making money. So when they say it takes money to make money, it takes your money for them to make money. So that's my fast disclaimers. And so, yeah, if you pay off your mortgage and you put your money in a retirement plan, you'll be better off than if you did nothing. But you're not going to be in the best place for a few reasons. One, inflation hurts you when you do all you can to pay off a mortgage. Because imagine that you did everything you could to pay off your mortgage, and then you walk out to the mailbox one day and there's a $2 million check, and you're like, this is amazing. The government's sending me $2 million. But then you find out your neighbor got the $2 million and their neighbor got $2 million. Everyone got the $2 million. What did that mean? It means we just watered down the soup. And everybody that worked so hard to pay off their mortgage just found out that inflation was really valuable dollars that are no longer as valuable. So if I have a 30-year mortgage, every year, that mortgage feels like a little bit less of a burden because inflation's actually helping me, right? If I put all my money in a retirement plan, I create no cash flow. And that would be like saying, I want to run a marathon, but I'm not going to prepare by doing any running. I'm just going to relax until the day of the race. That's kind of what we're taught in finance. Set it and forget it, invest early, often, and always. And then one day, someday, we'll finally learn how to create cash flow when we've lost our ability to create an income with our ability. And now it's all a market that determines our income. Can you see like how frustrated this makes me that this is what people are taught? And the part of the reason it's taught is because people don't want to take responsible for their money and finances. They want to believe it's too hard. They don't have the time. They're not smart enough. So they just hand it off to Wall Street. Where would we trust Wall Street in any other thing? Would you take kids to Wall Street daycare? You'd be like, oh, sorry, we lost 7% of your son, but it's just toes, I think. And I hope that those grow back.
And you have to pay us to do that.
Exactly. You still have to pay. And by the way, would you get on Wall Street Airlines? Because you'd be like, is this the one that crashes? Are they all doing cocaine up there in the it's like we would never trust Wall Street with any other brand, but somehow we trust them with our money because we're told it's too complicated. We're not smart enough, and they know better.
That's the same as medicine, right? We speak a language that is very difficult to understand.
Right.
We're told, or I think, not as a doctor, but as patients, that we're just trust the doctors, right? I think things are switching, and I'm so excited that patients and people are realizing that their health is their responsibility. And so hopefully people will realize that their finances doesn't have to be complicated. It can be, something they can take control of. Okay. We got a couple more decades.
So on this, 20-year, 30-year, 40-year, look, this isn't even my book, but I would recommend Let's Retire Retirement by Derek Coburn. One of my really close friends has the best decade by decade outline, because guess what? If you're willing to save a little bit less money in your 20s or a little bit less in your 30s when you have time with your family, then you just, if you go, I'm going to retire at 70 instead of 60, you only have to save like a fourth of what you'd save to retire at 60, which means you don't have to work yourself so hard, which means you'll have better health, which means you can spend more time with your kids when they actually are around and might like you. Because if you neglect them your whole life and now you're retired and now you have a bunch of money, they've got their own stuff and they learn from you to just work your life away. So that book is so good. Let's Retire Retirement on this very topic that we're discussing here, because retirement's an old, antiquated notion that came from an industrial age that no longer exists. My dad was a coal miner. You should retire if you're a coal miner. But you have more wisdom now than you had 10 years ago. And if you're financially in a place where you could retire and choose to, we lose that wisdom. Athletes have to retire because they lose a step over time because of aging. But people that have wisdom in this world and create intellectual property, the longer they're around, the more life experience they have, the more resources that they've gathered from people, and the more they learn how to articulate in a more clear fashion. What if we just didn't work ourselves so hard that we can't wait for retirement, and we took some trips along the way? We just built the life we didn't want to retire from. We designed a life that we loved. And so, yeah, maybe in your 40s, you can put away, like I'm more about cash flow than accumulation. If you're in accumulation, people say at 20, you just have to save, because if you save for 10 years in your 20s, you don't have to save in your 30s and 40s. And people that save for 20 years from their 30s to 40s will have less money than the person that saved their first 10 years in their 20s when you're all 60. The thing is, that's true, but it's also not taking into consideration how you make more money, how you keep more money, how you have financial intelligence, how you invest in yourself, how you focus on cash flow. It's always based upon setting it, forgetting it, and locking money away, which, by the way, when you do that, everyone else makes money on you. The banks are cash flowing, telling you not to cash flow. Institutions are telling you, to take risk, but you're taking the risk. They're getting the return. I mean, it's, as you start to unwind it, it starts to piss you off a little bit.
Okay. What about those 60 somethings that are like, oh crap. Here we are.
I just talked to someone that's 62, good friend of mine, has $0 set aside.
Okay. Walk us through.
Thanks to the work that you do. Like when I have someone that's like, but I'm 60. I'm like, today being 60, 100 years ago was like being 30. So like, let's realize that. I'm like, at 60, you're at halftime. Stop acting like it's the end of the fourth quarter. And by simply reframing that, because we have these memes and notions that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And like, I did a master class last night. People are like, but I'm 60, but I'm 52. I'm like, and? Like, I have friends right now that are 65 that are more productive than they've ever been before. But they took trips along the way. They didn't work themselves to death. So if you find yourself exhausted from how you did it before, it's time to create a new game. And if you focus on, like, look, I sold my business in 2021. I tried to be a comedian, even though I got it on Amazon Prime. I wasn't like, making a lot of money. I was spending more than I was making, let's be honest. But in 2024, I decided to launch a business. And here I am, not that far removed from, not like when I started that till today, I've already got $75,000 a month of recurring revenue from what I started, because I had all the mental capital, all the relationship capital, all the knowledge that I was able to circumvent and make that a much shorter distance to get where I wanted to go. So you have to take and be willing to ask for support. If you're in your 60s and not where you want to be, you got to stop thinking that you're tired or that you've done so much, or recounting the mistakes you made in the past. You got to forgive yourself, love yourself. And you just got to think, how can I create more value? And how can I create it where it's recurring revenue, passive type income, cash flowing type income, versus locking it away? Because guess what? If you're 60 and you want to retire at 70, a retirement plan will do zero good for you. Compound interest looks anemic over 10 years. If you earn 10%, it only doubles after 7.2 years. So that's not really going to replace your income. So focus on value creation, infrastructure, cash flow, picking one of those lanes and investing, and just stop thinking it's old. It's not. I mean, like when in 2023 and I was in kidney failure, I was older than most people in their 60s. I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I wasn't feeling very good. My blood pressure got up to 192. Like, I could tell. I was on stage one day. I was like, I don't feel right. This doesn't feel good. So I took a beat. I took care of my health, and I came back stronger. I don't think, I'm 47, I'm old. I'm thinking, damn, I'm 47. I have this huge amount of life work that led to this huge amount of relationships that can support me, and this big mission and vision that I can dedicate my life to. That's the key. It's I go, what can I dedicate 25 years to? And when you think that way in a longer term vision, it compels you forward versus being stuck thinking, I should have put more money in my retirement plan. Who cares? I have $0 in a retirement plan because I don't believe in them.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I don't talk everybody else out of doing a retirement plan.
That's right for you.
It's not my thing,
Right. I think that I heard recently the definition of being rich. That's such a loaded word that has so many nuances and definitions for people. But the definition of rich is that more money would not change what you currently do.
That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah. I thought, okay, so it's not a number. It's not a, whatever. It's about that place inside of you that says, I don't need to retire. I'd actually just keep doing this and I'm good. You're writing that down. I love it.
I love it.
So we walk through the decades. We walk through insurance. We walk through a checklist. We'll put the notes in where people can contact you and get that checklist. Is there any other really important thing that people need to understand about their finances other than just get over your fear and, dive in? It's literally like the swimming pool, just go. You can walk in, you can run in, you can dive in, but you need to go in.
Yeah, whether in your 20s, your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it doesn't matter. There's two things. Number one, you want to be financially independent, have enough cash flow from assets to cover your expenses. Then you have choice. Choice whether you work the next day, choice on what you do. Your foundation is handled. Number two, financial freedom is a state of mind, so it can happen in a moment. It's when money is no longer the primary reason or excuse we would do or not do something. It's a consideration, it's just no longer the consideration. And so when we're financially free, we can come from a place of abundance because scarcity is the greatest destroyer of wealth. So abundance says, how can I serve others? How can I solve problems? How can I add value? How can I do that in a way that's congruent and aligned with who I am and what I want to do? And I'll tell you this, when you can design a game worth playing, when you can enjoy the process along the way, that's where you've created a life you don't want to retire from, where the win is actually in the work. And when the win is in the work, then you find more fulfillment. And it doesn't mean that just because you're doing fulfilling work that you're going to get paid the most, because I could have got paid more as an investment banker with the job I got offered in my 20s, but I didn't want to be an investment banker. I probably could have got paid more as an institutional investor, but I didn't like to golf and they wanted me to go out and do all that kind of stuff with clients. It's like, even if I was willing to sell insurance like I did in my 20s, there's a bunch of renewals that would come with that. But I chose to do something that was more fulfilling. I love to write. So I've written 10 books. I love to speak. So I do things like this. I love to build relationships. I love to create. I love to connect. So it's a little bit harder path in some ways because I'm inventing models versus adopting what's already there. But it's also richly rewarding for me because I don't just measure richness in the dollars in my bank account. That's part of it for sure. I look in my quality of life, my mindset, my health, my social well-being. We just hosted we're going to start this monthly brunch, and we just had 35 people over to our house on Sunday. My wife did this brunch. I was like, that was awesome. It was just a fun day. My wife and I do our coffee and conversations every morning in this little nook on the backyard that we just finished, looking at a beautiful view. At night, we do our vision and visit, sometimes from the hot tub, sometimes just sitting outside, looking at the stars. I mean, that's wealth. I think that wealth is our ability to be present. So when we're thinking what happens in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and we're using time and our age as our frame, it takes us out of being present. And it takes us to either living in a life of striving or regretting. Striving is where we're playing to win, but we never enjoy the process along the way. Or regretting is playing not to lose and wishing we could change the past, which has already happened, not learning the actual lessons of value. So when we can value ourselves, when we can set higher standards for how we want to live, and when we determine the way that we want to live, then we can actually live wealthy, not just be wealthy. Because there's people that have plenty of money, but they're broke mentally, and they're the broke millionaire. You want to read about the broke millionaire? Buy the book, The Millionaire Next Door. There's a bunch of people that have a lot of money, but live like paupers. That book was the least inspiring book, and I almost became a miser reading it, and then realized, well, great. When they die, they just pass this money on to their kids. They didn't know there was any money. They just blow it, and it makes life worse. Why not use money to bless your life and the life of others? Why not use it to enjoy the process along the way and find out what matters? My wife and I have this Living Wealthy account, and when there's money in it, that's when we just go, should we do lay down seats? Hell yeah. I want to buy this ridiculous jacket. It's super expensive, but I'm going to take from the Living Wealthy account. Great. No judgment. Hey, that's the thing, is we just need some permission to prosper, some permission to spend, and some permission to feel like we're worth the money instead of hearing some voice in our head from a preacher, teacher, family, or friend that says that's not worth the money, or that's foolish, or you've just spent too much. And you know what? Who are they to say? Value's perspective. So once you know what you value, don't, like, I drive a truck and I love my truck. I used to drive a Bentley because everybody said, oh, you should drive a really nice car because you'll get high-end clients. Tami, you know which clients we got? If I was going for high school boys, we would have crushed it. That was not our market segment. If I was going for money-grubbing whores, we would have crushed it, because I got to tell you, there were women that paid attention to me when I drove that car that never paid attention to me before that, because they just saw that as like dollar sign driving around. You know, I told, once I went to this restaurant, really high-end restaurant, I go, like, hey, can we go for a ride? I was like, I'm married. They're like, we don't care. These girls was like, yeah, exactly. Like, the Bentley was not me. It was me trying to whatever. Now, other people love those things. I love my Ford Raptor, and, you know, Ford just texted me, hey, if you want an appraisal on your truck and do a trade, I'm like, dude, I'm going to drive this truck till it dies. It's got 95,000 miles on it. It looks brand new because I treat it like my little baby, but I take it everywhere I want to go, like hunting last week. So just find what you value. Don't let everybody else dictate what you value. I value views. That's why I have an amazing view from my house and my cabin. I value it because it inspires me. But I don't value wine. I don't like, might as well just, like, I don't drink wine anyway now with my kidneys, but like, when people get all, I went to Napa with my wife and I was like, how long do we have to hear this bullshit story about how this thing started? Like, they're an hour in and I don't even care. Are we going to drink the wine? Are we going to hear about how cool the person is that built this damn place? I just want to have some wine and have them shut the F up so that you and I can hang out, you know? But other people,
But if
they
it
love
was
that.
olive oil, I'd be there.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, yeah, olive oil, right? That's like, you find out what your preferences are, what's worth it for you.
Yeah.
And when we know what we want, then we can go for it. But if we try to appease others, or we try to prove something, trying to prove something to someone else leads to bitterness and anger. It might be motivating initially, but it doesn't lead to prosperity, peace of mind, even if it leads to a big bank account. You know, like, I watched this video the other day someone sent me. It was Steve Harvey. He was saying, you know what? Every year I send a TV to my teacher that didn't believe in me and said I couldn't make it. I'm like, why are you an asshole? You made it. Why are you torturing this teacher when you were probably a dickhead when you were a little kid? Like, just own it. Like, that's part of what makes you great now and funny, but don't, like, throw it in their face. Like, you know, anyway, just, you know, that was a long answer to your last question, but I apparently had a lot to say about it, Tami.
Yeah, well, you know, the through line that I hear is you need to give yourself permission to explore and embrace what you really want. And
And I don't think those people are willing to allow themselves to do that.
Or allow themselves the time. We're so distracted all day, and you cannot know what, I think that's the beauty of boredom.
It is. You know, when I went to Italy, we went there for 63 days, and I was bored because I'm up before everybody else. We're just, you know, it's really quiet. We're on this 8 acres, and, you know, it's a small town. There's nobody really around. So, like, I just had a lot of time to think. When I came home, I started doing comedy. When I came home, I learned how to make an amazing espresso and took classes at Intelligentsia. When I came home, I learned to fly fish. Like, it's because I had that boredom that I got to ask, like, what do I want? I just went hunting for 2 weeks. I did get an elk, by the way, while I was hunting. And I missed one that still haunts me. I can't sleep very well because every time I close my eyes. But I had so much time to think, so much time to ponder. And it was such a gift. I woke up at 1 a.m. one night and I just wrote down all the things I wanted. And it just got me. I was like, how do I want to be as a husband? How do I want to be as a dad? How do I want to be as a son? How do I want to be as a brother? How do I want to be as a friend? How do I want to be as a business? I just got to, like, ask. And I came home and, like, I just got more direct with some people. There's been a company stringing me along for a while about this really big deal. And I met with them yesterday. I was like, hey, I'm done if you guys don't move forward. I've overcome every objection. I'm not going to do anything else. You guys have 2 weeks to decide, and then I move on. And by the way, they've made millions of dollars already. I've made pennies. So it's like, but I had that time to think and be like, it's okay to want what I want. It's okay to say no.
Yeah. Yes, that's the thing. I think that boredom is similar to fasting. So when we fast, our body goes around and it consumes like the zombie cells and the senescent cells, and it cleans up crap. And boredom, it kind of just goes through your soul and it cleans up all of the distractions and the things that have been preventing you from understanding what gives you joy?
I think I've done I think I've done about a dozen 5-day water cleanses, right? And so, number one, I'll have dreams in the middle of one of those, only do water and salt. I have dreams of like pounding M&Ms. And then my dream, like, oh shit, I broke my fast. But it was just me dreaming about eating some crazy. And I was like, how insane am I? And then I told my wife, I'm like, we'll be like sitting there. Sometimes we'll do it together. And I'm like, hey, what are you thinking about? And she's like, I'm thinking about like a big ribeye. I'm like, oh my God, that's like, and we're fantasizing about food. When I'm on a water cleanse, then I think it's the only time I think about something more than sex, and it's food. Food takes over and enters the pole position because I'm thinking about, oh, like, what are we going to have? And what's going to be that first meal? And how are we going to break this thing? And, it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, it's like, let's clean up all those zombie cells. Let's do this. And also just the mental exercise of it, right?
Yeah,
So,
for
and by the way,
sure.
I've never been more productive than when I'm on these 5-day water cleanses, because when you're not eating, it's like, oh, I can do
There's a
some more
lot of extra
writing right
time.
now.
Yeah,
Clean up the
fasting
whole
is
house. Like
is
it's like the spring cleaning time. It's the whole deal.
it's powerful medicine. It's not for everyone, but yeah, it can be powerful. So you already, answered the question that we always finish with, and that is, and maybe you can say too. I always ask my guests, what book would you recommend? It doesn't have to be about finance, but you can reiterate the one that you had mentioned, and maybe mention another one. And what's one of your favorite books, and where do you think that our listeners can find it?
My favorite book that I'm revisiting on a regular basis right now is by Rick Rubin. It's called The Creative Act. And it's like the most embrace art and live in the moment. I just love it. I've listened to it. I've read it more than once. That's it's sitting over there on my table right there. And then I mentioned Let's Retire Retirement. My friend Derek Coburn wrote it. I just, it's like we're both in this financial game, and I thought he just articulated certain things so well. And I sat down and read it in one flight. Like I met with him in DC. It wasn't out. He handed me the book. I read it. By the time I landed, I'm like, hey, dude, happy to endorse. He's like, all right, I have the endorsements. I was like, I'm going to tell everyone about it. I bought a bunch of copies, handed it out to people. So, that's a good financial book. Now, I think I have 3 phenomenal financial books, as arrogant as that might sound with saying myself, but Killing Sacred Cows 2. If you like comedy, you can get the audiobook, and I teach, and then I do comedy behind it. And then Money Unmasked. We talked a lot about that with money personas. It's one of the best mindset books to help you think beyond where the scarcity and limitations are. And then What Would the Rockefellers Do is my most popular book. Sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It's a very practical way of how you like initiate a legacy and make it accessible. And I think especially like the family constitution and the family retreat structures I talk about in there are pretty like they're pretty engaging for people that do that work, because it gets them to really understand the essence of who they are, what they stand for, and how to translate that as an act of love to their family now and even after they're gone. And so those 3 books, GarrettGunderson.com/Rich Life Bundle, cheaper than getting them on Amazon if you get them from there. And I'll throw in the audiobooks, and there's 2 really badass workbooks that we throw in there too.
Amazing. We'll have all of this in our notes so people can connect. Thank you so much. What a huge wealth of information, pun absolutely intended. And thank you for sharing your most valuable knowledge with us in your time. And listeners, thank you for sharing your time with us. It's your most valuable commodity that you have. And remember, knowledge and health is contagious. So please like, share, and pass it on. Have a beautiful day.